What happens when a titan of industry is brought to its knees? Ukraine, week after week, has targeted Russia's lifeblood, its oil refineries. While battles rage and casualties mount, this strategic assault focuses on crippling Russia's economy rather than just its military. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the implications are staggering. As of October 1st, reports reveal that Ukraine's relentless strikes have devastated a catastrophic 38% of Russia's refining capacity. Imagine that, a third of an entire nation's refining system obliterated, leaving Vladimir Putin teetering on the edge of desperation. But the nightmare for Putin doesn't end there. He finds himself scrambling for assistance, turning to Belarus as Ukraine continues its systematic dismantling of Russia's oil infrastructure. This isn't just about numbers, it's about the very foundation of power crumbling under pressure. With each strike, Ukraine has fine-tuned its strategy, targeting refineries repeatedly, ensuring Russian repairs are never completed. The slow pace of repairs creates a vicious cycle, with new damage relentlessly inflicted before old damages can even be fixed. A staggering total of 338,000 tons of daily refining capacity has gone entirely offline. This results in an alarming deficit. Russia is now facing a 20% shortfall in gasoline supply. Imagine locals waiting in lines that stretch for blocks, all for a chance to fill their tanks, a drastic shift from the days when they filled up with ease. Reports show prices skyrocketing, with some regions seeing costs rise to $4.52 per gallon, nearly double the government's claims. How can Putin hide this from the very people he seeks to control, even while they experience the squeeze of an economy spiraling into chaos? As fuel shortages expand from isolated regions to cities, the situation has turned dire. Experts are sounding the alarm. This isn't a passing inconvenience, but a glaring warning sign. With gasoline now a prized commodity, rationing has begun, and some areas even face strict limits on how much fuel can be purchased at a time. How sustainable is a regime that can't provide essential resources for daily life? In this frantic backdrop, Putin's only lifeline is Belarus, but this relationship is not straightforward. Just last decade, Russia cut off gas supplies to Belarus over debts. Yet, now, Putin has no choice but to rely on Belarus for support. The irony thickens, as Belarus, once perceived as a puppet state, must decide if it can even meet Russia's needs. Will Belarus stand as a savior, or is it on the brink of its own struggles? In the complex dance of geopolitics, the evolving narrative underscores one fundamental truth: when an economic powerhouse shows cracks, the world watches and waits for the consequences. How will this end for Putin? Can he maintain control when the situation continues to unravel? Ukraine is hammering Russia's refineries relentlessly. Sanctions choke supply chains. That deadly combo steals 38% of Russia's refining power. And it's only getting worse. The Kyiv Post lays out the grim stats. From Sila, the market intelligence firm. Imagine the roar of bombs shaking the earth. The acrid stench of burning oil fills the air. Ukraine's strikes shred Russia's refining muscle. 338,000 tons vanish daily. Russia's gasoline output plunges by 1 million tons. Havoc rules the domestic market. Feel the tremble of desperation in lined-up drivers. The Kyiv Post warns, Russia falls 20% short on gasoline demand. This cripples Putin's grip on power. He spins lies to control the masses. Withholds truths. Claims victory over Ukraine is near. The front lines quiver with false hope. But how does he spin when citizens claw for fuel once plentiful? Queues stretch like endless shadows. Each day deepens Russia's fuel famine. Can Putin hide this unraveling fabric of lies? Forbes on September 29. David Hambling dissects the meltdown. Shortages creep from distant, dismissed corners. Now they engulf the whole nation. Hear the faint drip of drying pumps. Smell the sour frustration in the wind. Rising prices. Long queues. Rationing. Pumps dry. Hambling's words paint a new cruel normal. Ukraine forces Russians to swallow Putin's war fantasies whole. Prices sting without mercy. Hambling notes buyers shell out up to $4.52 per gallon. Double Russia's fake average of 2.66. Deception bears its fangs. Official claims mock real pain. Euromaidan press hits harder. October 1st report. Since 2025 start, wholesale prices soar over 40%. AI 92 grade hits $880 per ton. AI 95 at $850. Consumers shoulder the burden. If stations can even stock the dear fuel. How long until these cracks shatter Putin's throne? His desperation turns him to unworthy knees. What ally awaits in the fog of Belarus? Conflict brews in overlooked bonds. Will they save him, or devour him next? The previous segment revealed the shocking reality of skyrocketing gasoline prices in Russia, which have surged nearly 40% since January 2025. This sharp hike in costs reveals the stark contrast between the government's claims and the struggles of ordinary citizens. Many are now paying exorbitant amounts at the pump, significantly more than the government's artificially low figures. As the crisis continues to unfold, wholesale gasoline prices have exploded, reaching $880 per ton for AI 92 grade and $850 for AI 95. The situation grows dire, with consumers feeling the brunt of these burdensome prices, assuming that gas stations even have fuel to sell. In his frantic attempt to alleviate these overwhelming issues, President Putin has turned to Belarus for assistance, a move that underscores just how desperate Russia's situation has become. Strikingly, more than 20 regions across Russia are now facing dire shortages. In Crimea, strict limits are enforced, allowing only 30 liters, or about 6.5 gallons, per customer. Some areas have it even worse, restricting purchases to just over 2.5 gallons. For perspective, an average sedan needs between 12 to 16 gallons for a full tank, meaning people are left with barely enough fuel to get by. The panic is palpable as regional gasoline chains scramble to adapt. Some are only offering fuel to commercial clients with fleet cards, while others limit sales to those without such cards, showcasing a complete breakdown in fuel distribution. This chaotic scramble is a response to the crippling effects of Ukraine's relentless strikes on Russian refineries. Gas station closures have become an all-too-frequent occurrence, a harbinger of the chaos that now grips daily life. Imagine parents stranded without fuel, unable to pick up their children from school. The scent of gasoline, once a comfort, now carries the heavy weight of uncertainty and despair across the nation. Will Putin's quest for aid from Belarus yield any relief, or is it merely a desperate attempt to mask an accelerating crisis? Stay tuned as the reality of this unfolding disaster reveals the truth hidden beneath state-controlled narratives. In the aftermath of relentless strikes, the reality of life in Russia has taken a dramatic turn. The leadership, desperately trying to put a positive spin on the situation, can no longer mask the creeping disaster. Citizens are left waiting in long lines, gaping at empty gas stations, while the once oil-rich nation faces a dire shortage. Could this be the moment that cracks the facade of power held by Vladimir Putin? Reports from credible sources highlight the gravity of the situation. The Moscow Times bluntly states, Putin can't hide Russia's gasoline crisis. Behind closed doors, fuel industry leaders may insist that this shortage is just temporary, but the reality is stark. These disruptions signal a significant flaw in the wartime economy Putin has engineered, a system that was intended to last mere days but has dragged on for years. As Russia slips deeper into recession, economic forecasts point to a 0.6% contraction in gross domestic product, echoing the sounds of alarm bells ringing in the Kremlin. The implications are troubling. As gasoline prices skyrocket, everyday citizens grapple with dwindling finances, already stretched thin from rising food costs. How long can the public endure this strain before questioning their leaders' grip on the country? With the pressures mounting, Putin has turned to Belarus, once viewed as a mere puppet in his geopolitical playbook. This has marked a significant shift in their relationship. Historically, the bond between Russia and Belarus has been fraught, characterized by manipulation and mistrust. Remember when Russia cut off gas supplies to Belarus over debts? Yet now, in a twist of fate, Belarus finds itself in a position to either assist or weaken Russia further. But can Belarus truly afford to step in? As Moscow faces restrictions on importing fuel and seeks to import refined products without taxes, the stakes will rise. Belarus, however, is hesitant. Their past dealings with Russia have been fraught with difficulty and negotiation. It's a precarious dance where every step could decide the fate of an already fragile alliance. Stay tuned as we explore whether this unexpected alliance will serve as a lifeline for Russia, or whether Belarus, caught in its own struggles, will simply watch from the sidelines as chaos unfolds. What happens next could alter the course of the conflict and reshape the map of power in Eastern Europe forever. Imagine the bitter chill of a Russian winter, where icicles hang like frozen tears from the rooftops, and the smell of diesel fumes clings to the air like an unwelcome shroud. In the previous section, we explored how Putin, facing Ukraine's relentless refinery strikes that crippled 38% of Russia's refining capacity, turned to Belarus in desperation. Belarus had long played the role of a puppet, tied by energy deals and invasion support, but its relationship with Russia was never without friction. Have you ever watched a powerful leader crumble under the weight of economic ruin, his once iron grip slipping like sand through fingers, while the nation he rules starves for fuel? Picture Putin on his knees, begging a former ally for salvation. That's the shocking reality unfolding now. In 2010, Russia severed gas supplies to Belarus over unpaid debts. The hiss of pipelines going silent echoed through ministries, a stark reminder that their bond was fragile, especially after Belarus aided Putin's invasion. Tense meetings, slammed doors, the acrid scent of cut gas lingering. Yet, desperation shifts power. Once an influencer, Putin now pleads with Belarus to bail him out. Touch the cold phones in those diplomatic calls, feel the sweat on brows. Is Belarus eager? Perhaps not capable. On September 30th, the Eurasian Economic Commission, or EEC, lifted import duties on fuel. A lifeline for Russia to flood in refined goods from Belarus tax-free. Feel the rush of relief, the engine of crisis stalling? Ukraine's blows left Russia in a 9-month fix, assuming no more strikes. That's naive, isn't it? Can you hear the distant booms of drones, smell burning oil? The EEC move banned fuel exports elsewhere, positioning Russia for one-sided imports from neighbors. Unfair trade, weighted against equals. Putin knocked on Belarus's door, but initial responses were cool. Who could predict how an underdog nation's defiance turns a superpower's plea into humiliation? Reviewing the last segment, Putin pleaded with Belarus after refinery devastation, but initial responses chilled his hopes. Did Belarus reveal a hidden ace, a surge in fuel sales that exposes brinkmanship, turning allies into savvy traders? Visualize stacks of fuel barrels gleaming under warehouse lights, the sharp tang of gasoline sharp in your nose, engines revving in anticipation. Despite talks, Belarus resisted. Taxes in place, Russia's offers hovered below $1,000 per ton. International markets beckoned at $1,300 to $1,900. No deal on needed volumes. In August, Belarus declared fuel supply restrictions to Russia. Hear the echo of that announcement, rattle chains of dependency? Then, a twist emerges. Between July and September, Belarus boosted sales of petroleum products to Russia by 36% via the St. Petersburg exchange, compared to last year. That's 97,000 tons. Two key products for Russia, gasoline and diesel, flowed generously. Touch the cool contracts, feel the paper snap shut. Is this friendship reborn, or calculated gain? The grin on Belarus leaders' faces, odors of commerce mixing with politics. Why sell more when resisting claims? Hypocrisy thrives in war's shadow. Can Putin see through the haze, or is he grasping at illusions? Will Belarus's newfound leverage shatter Russia's facade, leaving Putin scrambling for scraps? Recapping the prior vignette, Belarus sold more fuel to Russia secretly, yet publicly restricted supplies, wielding power like a hidden weapon. What if the gasoline crisis explodes in ordinary lives, forcing Russians to beg for fuel while leaders shroud the truth? Envision long lines snaking through snowy streets, engines idling impatiently, the cold bite on exposed skin as queues stretch like frozen veins. This tension highlights the crisis's depth. Strikes offline 338,000 tons daily, gasoline output down 1 million tons. Domestic shortages at 20%, prices soaring. Russia's average claim, $2.66 per gallon. Reality, up to $4.52 in regions. Between January and today, wholesale jumps 40%, AI92 at $880 per ton, AI95 at $850. Queues haunt cities, rationing bites, 30 liters in Crimea, 10 elsewhere. Chains limit buyers, dry pumps, closures strand families. Parents abandoned kids at schools, exhaust fumes choking to despair. Leaders censor drone footage, but lies crack under weight. Russia's oil wealth mocks empty tanks. Moscow Times warns of recession, GDP shrinking 0.6% 2 quarters. Squeeze on rubles, costs climbing. Is this the end of Putin's control? How far will the humiliation go, as people's plight fuels revolution against a faltering dictator? In recent months, Belarus has shifted its stance on selling petroleum products to Russia, despite initial resistance. From July to September, sales soared by a staggering 36% compared to the previous year. During September alone, Belarus provided Russia with 168% more gasoline and nearly 83% more diesel than in August. This surge suggests that the Kremlin's pleas and the suspension of import tariffs were effective in persuading Belarus to assist in its time of need. However, there's a catch. Belarus's refineries are already stretched thin. According to reports, their production capacity ranges between 3 to 4 million tons of gasoline annually. With around 2 million tons consumed domestically, they only have about 1 to 2 million tons available for export. In stark contrast, Russia's demands are immense, consuming approximately 3 million tons of gasoline in just 1 month. This shortfall indicates that Belarus is grappling with its own limitations and may not be able to fulfill Russia's mounting demands. The reality is jarring for Putin, who finds himself dependent on this smaller nation for critical support. The situation raises an alarming question: can Russia's reliance on Belarus for fuel be the beginning of a deeper crisis for Putin's regime? As the war against Ukraine drags on, Putin's stranglehold on power is increasingly threatened by his own fuel shortages, leaving him scrambling for aid in an era of unprecedented desperation. This revelation opens up the disturbing possibility that a puppet state, struggling with its own needs, may not be the lifeline that Putin so desperately craves. How much longer can he maintain his grip on power without a reliable source of energy? The clock is ticking, and with each passing day, the stakes rise ever higher. The implications of this crisis could send shockwaves through Russia's economy and challenge Putin's ability to govern amidst chaos. The relentless pressure from Ukraine's strikes has crippled Russia's oil refineries, slashing 38% of its refining capacity and sparking a desperate gasoline shortage. Prices soar, queues stretch for hours, and Putin turns to Belarus, begging for scraps of fuel that barely scratch the surface. Imagine the hum of engines silenced, the acrid stench of unburned fuel wafting from drought-strapped pumps, and the gritty frustration of Russians grasping empty nozzles. How low will Putin stoop to dodge his own downfall as Ukraine humiliates him on the global stage? Belarus offers assistance, yes. Yet its yearly surplus falls woefully short. It covers just 1 month of Russia's ballooning needs. Desperation drives Putin to accept meager handouts. War accelerates consumption. Vehicles idle, lines form, and despair seeps into every tank. Desperate gas stations ration fuel. One chain limits buys to those with fleet cards. Another rejects them entirely. Chains tremble under the strain. Closures ripple through towns. Kids wait for pickups amid the chaos. Parents curse the bitter chill. Russia's oil empire crumbles. Sanctions hinder repairs. Strikes hammer again and again. Output drops by 1 million tons of gasoline daily. Domestic shortages hit 20%, a searing indictment of Putin's lies. He vowed quick victory, but queues expose the facade. In this crisis, Belarus proposes nuclear power for occupied Ukraine. Presented on September 26, Reuters reports President Lukashenko's pitch to Putin. We can build a new unit or station for Western Russia and liberated areas. It provides some relief. Power flows where gasoline fails. But does it solve the core plight? Nuclear offers electricity, not fuel for tanks or pickups. Russia relies on gas and coal mostly, with renewables and hydro. Gasoline stays untouched. Lukashenko hands Putin oranges when he craves apples. Is this mockery or a desperate distraction? Belarus can't stretch further without hurting its own. Even selling all surplus covers mere weeks. Lukashenko guards his people. He won't bleed Belarus dry for Putin's folly. The depths of despair reveal themselves. Putin, once mighty, now a supplicant facing doom. What catastrophic hammer will Ukraine unleash next? Will Putin's grip shatter under the weight? Hold on, as Belarus's promise unravels into mere shadow play. Russia sinks deeper into recession. GDP contracts 0.6% for quarters running. Food prices bite, alongside fuel hikes. Ledgers bleed red. People tighten belts, questioning loyalty. Could this spark rebellion? The war grinds on, fueled by Ukraine's precision. Strikes evolve. No respite for repairs. Thanks to sanctions, parts are scarce. Capacity dwindles further. Russia loses untold tons daily. Handling details it, queues, dry pumps, rationing. Prices hit $4.52 per gallon, double the official lie. Putin crawls to Belarus for salvation. EEC suspends duties on fuel. Russia stockpiles imports, bans exports elsewhere. Exports might soar, from neighbors only. Imports flood in, untaxed and urgent. Yet Belarus teases nuclear aid. Lukashenko eyes occupied zones. Electricity to light ruins. But fuel crisis festers. Raw wounds beg bandages. Lukashenko knows limits. He preserves his nation's strength. Selling all gasoline aids Russia, for a month max. Putin sees it. Begging continues. Twist, Belarus can't deliver miracles. Their offers mask irreparable damage. Putin faces isolation. Allies thin. Ukraine's shadow lengthens. Desperation breeds humiliation. Will it end his reign? Breathlessly, we await the next blow. Ukraine presses. Russia fractures. And what if the tables turn unexpectedly? Suspense coils, uncovering hidden fractures in the empire. In a gripping tale of conflict and resilience, the ongoing struggle between Ukraine and Russia unveils a dramatic twist. Ukraine's strategy of relentless strikes against Russia's oil refineries is proving devastating. Each week, Ukraine deals destructive blows, not just on battlefields, but where it truly counts, the heart of Russia's energy supply. Imagine this, a vast nation, rich in oil, crippled by its dependency on a resource now under siege. Russia's refining facilities are crumbling under the pressure, with operations halted at an astonishing rate. Reports reveal that Ukraine has successfully rendered 38% of Russia's refining capability non-functional, leaving President Vladimir Putin grappling with a crisis. The drive to fix what's broken is not just challenging, it's nearly impossible. But what happens when an empire's lifeline is severed? As Ukraine hones its tactics, it isn't merely targeting refineries once and retreating. Instead, it strikes and strikes again, ensuring that repairs remain an elusive goal for Russia. The numbers are staggering, over 338,000 tons of refining capacity lost each day, with a gas shortage leaving Russians waiting in long lines for what used to flow abundantly. The signal is clear, Ukraine's tenacity has introduced a new reality in Russia. Reports indicate that gasoline output has plummeted by about 1 million tons, creating chaos in domestic markets. Can you envision thousands of citizens queuing for hours at dusty pumps, only to be told there's no gas available? The desperation leads to rising prices, stretching family budgets and fueling discontent. As queues grow longer, the government's claims of stability become hollow. The crisis has spread from isolated regions to embrace the entire nation. Provincial areas once overlooked are now feeling the brunt as citizens struggle to find fuel. The absence of gasoline and soaring prices resonate throughout the country, revealing deep cracks in the facade of power that Putin desperately tries to maintain. With the reality of waterlogged sanctions and dwindling support, Putin's entreaty for assistance to Belarus seems increasingly pitiful. Despite Belarus's begrudging support, its meager gasoline production barely scratches the surface of Russia's overwhelming consumption needs. Yet, can a mere month's supply truly reverse the damages inflicted upon a crumbling empire? The very salvation Putin seeks may prove insufficient, only heightening the stakes of this conflict. Supply chains have faltered, and resupply seems an insurmountable challenge. Belarusian reluctance to comply with Russia's demands raises the stakes even higher, prompting fears for the stability of both nations. With Ukraine strikes escalating, one question looms large: how much longer can Russia endure the pressure before its very foundations begin to crumble? As we delve deeper into this conflict, the unraveling saga of Putin's gas crisis unfolds, an intricate maze of desperation, strategy, and the fight for survival in one of history's most intense geopolitical battles. Week after week, Ukraine continues to strike at the heart of Russia's economic power. We're not just talking about the devastating losses suffered on the battlefield or the destruction of tanks and aircraft. No, the real game changer is Ukraine's relentless assault on Russia's oil refineries. This strategy has been so effective that it has dismantled a significant portion of Russia's refining operations, leaving President Vladimir Putin scrambling for solutions. On October 1st, reports emerged confirming that Ukraine's assaults have annihilated a staggering 38% of Russia's refining capacity. Imagine that, over a third of their oil refinement operations vanished, leaving behind a gaping hole in their energy production. What's worse is that Ukraine isn't stopping. They've honed a strategy that repeatedly targets these facilities, ensuring they remain offline. The repairs that need to happen are slow and mired in complication due to severe shortages of necessary components, exacerbated by Western sanctions. Ukraine's efforts have effectively taken nearly 338,000 tons of Russian oil refining offline every day, sending ripple effects throughout the country. As a result, Russia is facing a domestic gasoline shortage of 20%. Picture this: citizens lined up for hours, desperately waiting for gas that used to flow with ease. And every claim Putin makes about Russia's prowess against Ukraine grows increasingly hollow when people can barely fill their tanks. The crisis has expanded across Russia, with reports highlighting escalating prices and restrictive purchases. At some stations, prices soar as high as $4.52 per gallon, straining budgets already stretched thin by recessionary winds. Gasoline shortages have become the new normal, with over 20 regions facing severe limitations on purchases. In Crimea, for instance, customers can only buy a painfully meager 30 liters, about 6.5 gallons, barely enough for half a tank in an average sedan. Meanwhile, in a desperate scramble, Putin has turned to Belarus for assistance. This rekindled relationship may seem like a lifeline, but Belarus is struggling to meet Russian demands. Just days earlier, a temporary suspension of import duties on all fuel was enacted. This move appears intended to provide Russia with a buffer during this fuel crisis. However, it won't resolve the underlying issues. As the situation deteriorates, Russian fuel chains are drastically limiting sales, with some focusing only on commercial entities due to dwindling supplies. This isn't mere mismanagement, it's panic. The ongoing drone strikes have shown no signs of slowing down, and with every passing day, Ukraine's strategy feels like a lead weight dragging Russia further down. In the backdrop of this chaos, Ukraine is expanding its drone production capabilities. Imagine producing millions of drones designed to pepper Russian defenses, forcing Putin to constantly reposition his air defenses and creating exploitable gaps in Russia's protection. Recent announcements from the European Commission indicate a significant boost in funding for Ukraine, aimed directly at enhancing this capacity. With $2.35 billion allocated for this purpose, Ukraine stands at the precipice of an unprecedented offensive opportunity. And so, as Ukraine presses forward, intense pressure mounts on Putin. The crisis is merely beginning, with projections suggesting that the percentage of offline refining capacity could escalate to 50%. Russia finds itself ensnared in a web of its own creation, while Ukraine continues to drive the momentum forward with each drone launched, threatening a total collapse of Russian energy dominance. This brings us to a vivid realization: one of the world's most oil-rich nations is teetering on the brink of disaster, their own resources running dry. How will a country beset by fuel shortages maintain the facade of strength in the eyes of its people? Each drop of oil lost to Ukraine marks not just a physical loss but also a crack in the narrative Putin has spun. The repercussions of this unraveling will echo through every facet of Russian society, revealing the truth behind the curtain of propaganda. In the ongoing struggle between Ukraine and Russia, an unexpected twist reveals the true impact of Ukraine's relentless drone strikes. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported a staggering cost of $74 billion to Russia since January 2025, a blow that accounts for approximately 4% of Russia's annual economic output. This might sound minor in percentage terms, but for a nation grappling with a severe economic downturn, it represents a staggering deficit that could shift the balance of power in this protracted conflict. As the situation intensifies, it's clear that Ukraine has no intention of halting its strikes. With Ukrainian forces successfully targeting vital Russian infrastructure, the Russian fuel crisis is poised to deepen, evolving into what could be the slow downfall of one of the world's energy giants. Oil and gas sales serve as the backbone of Russia's economy, contributing nearly 20% of its GDP and up to 50% of its federal budget. With each attack on refinery facilities, those figures are set to plummet further, leaving Russia scrambling for alternatives. In a desperate move, Putin has sought assistance from Belarus, but the aid he requires may not materialize given Belarus's own limited gasoline production. It becomes increasingly evident that Putin's only feasible escape from this crisis is to conclude the war before it consumes him. However, as the summer offensive witnessed Russia falter in its attempts to capture Pokrovsk, an important logistical anchor, the lessons of persistence seem lost on the Russian leader. Instead of retreating, he has ordered his forces into yet another hopeless assault, transforming his strategy into a self-inflicted bloodbath. The intensification of the conflict has turned Pokrovsk into a bloody battleground where Ukraine's defensive tactics are inflicting heavy losses on Russian troops. The echoes of artillery, the cries of the wounded, and the rising smoke of destruction signal the stark reality that Russia's ambitions are being ground to dust in a meat grinder of its own making. Will Putin acknowledge his blunders and pull back, or will he continue to double down, risking everything on a failing strategy? The fate of his leadership hangs in the balance as Ukraine continues to force him into desperation. How could Ukraine turn Russia's relentless war machine into a desperate retreat, bleeding its enemy dry with every counterstrike? Can one nation really grind an empire's ambitions to dust? Imagine the crunch of boots on shattered earth, the acrid smoke rising from tanks torn apart, the icy grip of fear as soldiers realize encirclement is inevitable. As we saw in our last episode, Russia's depleted forces stormed Pokrovsk, only to be annihilated in Ukraine's meat grinder, leaving more fallen comrades and a strategy in ruins. Now, the tide shifts even further. On September 30th, Euromaidan Press revealed Ukraine's bold counterattacks in Pokrovsk. Over just days, Ukrainians reclaimed ground mercilessly. After Russia seized small settlements near Pokrovsk, risking encirclement, Ukraine countered with precision. They isolated remaining attackers, sealing off access and leaving them stranded. No resupply. No way out. Can you feel the dread creeping in? The sticky sweat of panic as comrades watch ammo dwindle? This tactic exploits Russia's exhaustion. Summer offensives drained their troops. Now, trapped and weakened, they can't hold back Ukraine's advances. Russia's reinforcements? Charging into slaughter. Ukraine's fire rips through them like a scythe through wheat. The stench of burning fuel hangs heavy, the distant thud of artillery echoing despair. Euromaidan Press confirms these doomed attempts feed Ukraine's crossfire, a futile sprint to nowhere. For the encircled soldiers, time runs short. Battles rage near Dobrapilya. It's not Pokrovsk's equal in status, but vital, a gateway to highways crucial for Russia's goals. By September 12, Al Jazeera reported Russia's aggressive push there. Yet, losses mounted. They shed territory faster than they gained, the bitter taste of defeat sharpening with every retreat. Why humiliate an invader so? Because Ukraine's encirclement humiliates Putin, exposing his delusions. Is Russia's army invincible, or just a pawn in this deadly game? Twist, as Dobrapilya slips away, rumors swirl of mass surrenders. What if Moscow's prized troops crumble next? The air thick with uncertainty, nervous whispers. Will Ukraine seal Russia's doom? Stay tuned, as cracks widen and control fractures. As the conflict in Dobrapilya escalated, September marked a turning point for both sides. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky revealed a staggering trend. For every 5.21 square miles Russia captured, they lost an alarming 10 square miles they previously held. This unsustainable pattern was not just numbers, it was a clear indication of Ukraine's brilliant counter-strategy, effectively trapping Russian forces. By September 22, reports from Ukrinform indicated that Russian assaults were faltering. Ukraine's counteroffensives were exacting a heavy toll. Through an intricate encirclement strategy, Ukraine was not just holding ground but disrupting Russian logistics and stifling reinforcements. Viktor Trihobov, spokesperson for the Dnipro Operational Strategic Group of Troops, elaborated on Russia's faltering tactics. They infiltrated in small groups, breaching the first line of our defenses, he explained. They combined these small units into larger groups, attempting to consolidate their positions. But their initial success quickly turned to failure. The change in Russia's warfare strategy had become clear. Instead of launching large mechanized assaults intended to wear down Ukraine's defenses, they resorted to deploying smaller units comprised often of just a couple dozen soldiers. These units aimed to exploit weaknesses, creating gaps that larger forces could then capitalize on. Yet the reality was far from the intended strategy. As the days unfolded, it became apparent that Ukraine's defenses were holding strong. Instead of allowing Russian units to converge and strengthen their foothold, Ukrainian forces launched decisive strikes, systematically dismantling the invaders' logistics. Each failed attempt by Russia underscored a critical truth: Ukraine was forcing Russia into a retreat, leaving them scrambling to rethink their strategy in the face of unwavering resistance. What would happen next? Russia's leadership found themselves at a precarious crossroads, trapped by Ukraine's masterful maneuvers and increasingly desperate to regain control. The very fabric of their military plans was fraying. Would they adapt in time, or crumble under the weight of their own miscalculations? Amidst the relentless chaos of war, a surprising twist unveils itself. Small units of Russian soldiers infiltrate Ukrainian lines, hoping to exploit vulnerabilities. However, their mission quickly spirals into desperation. These scattered squads create temporary gaps in Ukraine's defenses, only to find themselves swiftly outmaneuvered and trapped. Ukraine's responsive tactics are masterful, forcing these Russian forces into a precarious situation and rendering their strategy ineffective. In a recent report from the Euromaidan press, the plight of Russian troops in Dobrapilya becomes alarmingly clear. Clinging to the settlement of Novodiretsk, a critical point once firmly in their grasp, Russian commanders see it as their final hope to regain momentum. Just weeks prior, Novodiretsk was a launchpad for assaults aimed at Pokrovsk. Yet, the tide has turned dramatically. Ukraine's counteroffensive has seized parts of the town, though not entirely. The remaining structures are shrouded in a gray area of control. Ukrainian drones patrol overhead, methodically locating and eliminating any lingering Russian presence. Despite this ever-tightening grip, Russian leadership clings to an illusion of possibility. They believe a desperate assault on Novodiretsk could bridge the gap to the trapped troops scattered throughout Dobrapilya. Unfortunately, such an endeavor warrants a heavy price, a significant loss of lives as Russian forces are compelled to swarm in hopes of regaining the settlement. Putin, undeterred by the looming casualties, fortifies his manpower in the area. But the question looms: why risk so much for such a meager prize? The answer lies in the encircled soldiers, whose survival hinges on reconnecting with Russian command. The stakes escalate, as Russia's vision of reclaiming Novodiretsk morphs from a strategic necessity into a desperate gamble with unpredictable consequences. Will this gamble result in calamity for Russia's soldiers, or will they somehow rally for a comeback? As the conflict drags on, every movement and decision reverberates through the battlefield, reminding us that war's unpredictability can twist fate in the blink of an eye. Those encircled troops in Dobrapilya, cut off and desperate, drive Russia's frantic push to retake Novodiretsk. It's their only lifeline to reconnect with trapped comrades. What shocking truth hides in Ukraine's unbeatable trap? Imagine the chaos: soldiers under relentless assault, forcing them to cower as shadows play tricks on their minds. Syrskyi's words from United 24 Media on September 26 expose Ukraine's genius strategy near the Kazeniai Torets River. Why does Ukraine always stay one step ahead? Anticipating Russia's assault, Ukraine reshaped the battlefield. Units redeployed swiftly. The barrier along the Kazeniai Torets River cut deep. Advanced Russian forces tumbled into a suffocating bag. Converging axes from north and south sealed their doom. Air assault forces closed the noose. Destruction unfolds now. Can Russia escape this masterful counteroffensive? In Dobrapilya, it's flawless. Sights, smells, and sounds tell the tale. Distant explosions echo like thunder, acrid smoke burns nostrils, mud clings like betrayal. Multiple cauldrons form, isolated and bleeding. No reinforcements breach the walls. Fresh troops head to Novodiretsk, only to face horror. Drones circle tirelessly. Do their rotors hum a deadly vigil? Every move watched. Ukraine anticipates routes. Russian soldiers exposed. Will this endless siege crush more lives? Encircled forces yearn for aid. Yet, Ukraine's web tightens. Sensory chaos reigns, boots sink into wet earth, fear's metallic taste lingers, faint whispers of distant commands mock the trapped. Russia's offensive crumbles here. What desperate gamble awaits as the front boils? Drones dive, soldiers vanish. Will Novodiretsk break the chain, or plunge deeper into Ukraine's abyss? Drones hover relentlessly above the battlefield, scanning the landscape for any sign of Russian troops in motion. Ukraine knows where every soldier is and predicts their route. The deadly dance of advancement begins. Every attempt by Russian reinforcements to break through is met with a ruthless response. As soon as they make a move, Ukraine's drones swoop down, and those soldiers vanish before they even reach the battle lines. This is a relentless killing ground, a meat grinder that Putin finds himself desperately trying to exploit. The Russian leader is fixated on capturing Pokrovsk and Dobrapilya. He will not waver in his pursuit, even as his strategy crumbles around him. With Ukraine's clever traps, the traditional tactics of smaller unit movements have lost their effectiveness. There are no longer safe passages to breach, only well-guarded kill zones monitored by Ukrainian forces. The situation grows dire near Novodiretsk, where pockets of Russian troops may be trapped. The only new ground Russia has gained is near a trench fortification, a small consolation in a sea of despair. Some troops may reach the trench, but they are boxed in, unable to escape without facing a relentless barrage from Ukrainian drones, as reported by Euromaidan Press. In a surprising twist, despite being a 21st-century conflict, trench warfare has returned with a vengeance. Both sides are digging in, using these makeshift fortifications to shield their infantry. The New York Times pointed out that Ukraine's counteroffensive, which ended in a disappointing stalemate, relied heavily on these trenches as they attempted territorial reclamation. Meanwhile, Russia's inability to dominate the skies has forced it to adopt a similar strategy, inching forward while hiding behind earthen walls. The stakes rise as each passing moment deepens the intensity. Will Russia find a way out of this tactical nightmare, or are they trapped forever in a deadly game of cat and mouse? Every second counts, and both sides know that the outcome could change the course of this war entirely. Can you imagine trenches turning the ground into a graveyard of dreams, where every step crunches through mud and whispers of death? That's where Ukraine's counteroffensive crumbled, forcing reliance on infantry to claw for ground in a world of endless ditches. Russia, battling for air control, digs even deeper, creeping forward through these muddy scars, inch by agonizing inch. Picture this shocking truth: worlds away from open fields, no man's land brims with invisible predators, ready to pounce like shadows in the night. What if one wrong move meant instant obliteration? But wait, what if I told you the real horror lurks not just in artillery blasts or drone swarms, but in a forgotten echo from history's darkest wars? World War I's trenches screamed with the artillery's unending thunder, turning charges into suicidal nightmares. Feel the earth tremble under your boots as shells whistle overhead, that acrid stench of gunpowder clinging to your skin like a grim cloak. Cross that desolate zone? Madness. Drones now reign supreme, flooding those barren stretches with their deadly buzz, attacking from all angles. The Atlantic Council revealed in July how Ukraine's armies, aerial and ground drones alike, besiege these fortifications relentlessly. Hear the high-pitched whine of uncrewed aircraft diving close, a metallic hum that heralds doom. Trapped Russian units near Novodiretsk? Mere pawns in a slaughter. Drones tear through flesh and metal, shredding reinforcements before they reach friendlies. Skin stings from the gritty dirt as soldiers huddle low, taste of sweat-saturated uniforms on parched lips. Breath shallow against the trench's damp embrace. This deadlock favors Ukraine entirely. Russia's aid stalls, encircled fighters erode away, lives extinguished in futile agony. Gray areas like Novodiretsk will shatter free, yielding more lost ground and needless deaths for invaders. Russia bleeds soldiers faster than claims to territory justify. Desperation mounts in Dobrapilya, gloom thick as fog over the lines. So, what's Russia's next desperate gambit? Simple, from Putin's twisted view, no retreat from Pokrovsk's lure. He craves that city fiercely, feeding assaults even as defenses buckle, plunging deeper into a quagmire of humiliation. But here's the jaw-dropping twist, buried in whispers of strategy, this trap mirrors World War I's stagnant horror, yet drones flip the script. Ukraine doesn't just hold lines, it humbles enemies into oblivion. Feel your pulse race as realization hits, Russia's once mighty push now a farce, troops tricked into their own coffin. Will Putin swallow his pride, or watch his empire crumble in endless queues for fuel while trenches consume his bravest? The ghosts of no man's land await his answer. What's your guess on who breaks first? In the ongoing struggle for control in eastern Ukraine, tensions escalate as Russian ambitions clash with strategic counterattacks from Ukraine. As the landscape unfolds, one question looms large: what will happen next in Pokrovsk? For Vladimir Putin, the stakes are monumental. Securing the city is not just a tactical move, it is viewed as a vital step toward dominating the entire Donetsk region. Pokrovsk, located a mere 12.4 miles from the Donetsk administrative border, holds immense significance for Russia's aspirations. However, the relentless assaults by Russian forces come at a staggering cost, with troops and reinforcements lost in overwhelming numbers. Despite this, Putin remains undeterred, convinced that victory in Pokrovsk is achievable. Yet, it's the response from Ukrainian leadership that will dictate the coming chapters of this conflict. Oleksandr Syrsky, Ukraine's armed forces commander-in-chief, has stepped up his presence in both Pokrovsk and Dobropilya. His commitment was evident during a visit on September 12, where he engaged directly with commanders to analyze the operational situation and strategize. His intention is clear: to ensure that every Russian advance is countered swiftly and effectively. This fresh approach marks a notable shift from previous oversight that allowed Russia to advance unchecked. Now, Ukrainian forces are prepared to retaliate vigorously, thwarting Russian ambitions in real time. With Volodymyrivka securely under Ukrainian control, Syrsky's eyes are set on new counteroffensives aimed at recapturing lost ground. As each day passes, the battlefield grows hotter with anticipation. Will Syrsky's revitalized strategy pay off? Can Ukraine reshape the narrative in their favor amidst Russia's relentless attacks? The stakes are monumental, as the fate of these regions hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of a knife. How will this fierce resolve affect the future of the region? The intensity of the struggle encapsulates a broader battle not just for land, but for the very essence of national identity. The barbed tension fills the air as Ukrainian forces prepare for what lies ahead, held back only by the specter of Putin's ambitions. Gas stations may run dry in Russia, but the determination to reclaim and protect territory is fueled fully in Ukraine. In this high-stakes game of survival, every choice could ignite a chain reaction, altering the fates of both soldiers and civilians alike in this tumultuous landscape. In the aftermath of ongoing conflicts, a robust new battleground emerges in Ukraine. The war, seasoned with relentless struggles, shifts gears as Ukraine's military strategizes a counterattack to reclaim territory. Their next target is Volodymyrivka, a settlement now under Ukrainian control, paving the way for a transformative shift. Recently, Ukraine liberated Volodymyrivka from Russian forces, a significant victory reported on August 25. This strategic move was crucial, breaking down a salient that had allowed Russia to extend its grip in the Pokrovsk region. Ukrainian forces executed a well-coordinated offense that not only reclaimed the settlement but also trapped Russian troops, once again changing the dynamics of the war. Now that Volodymyrivka is theirs, the Ukrainian military, under the command of General Syrsky, has a bold strategy. They plan to fortify positions and turn this settlement into a launchpad for further counterattacks against Russian-held territories. Their mission is clear: to build a formidable barrier that restricts Russian reinforcements, particularly towards the encircled troops deep within Dobropilya. This advancement isn't only about defense, it's also about seizing the high ground. With a careful assessment of the topography, Ukraine aims to take control of the elevated areas surrounding Dobropilya. This not only secures their flanks but also significantly narrows the chances for Russian counterattacks from higher ground. However, not everything is straightforward. The specter of Russia's formidable 155th Marine Brigade looms over their plans. As Ukraine continues to push forward, they must prepare for fierce resistance from this elite unit. Will this audacious strategy pay off? Can the momentum shift in Ukraine's favor as they boldly challenge the adversary? The tension thickens, and the outcome remains uncertain, leaving both sides on edge. In the ongoing clash between Ukraine and Russia, the battlefield dynamics are shifting dramatically. While Ukraine has shown exceptional resilience, gaining the upper hand, it faces a formidable adversary, the notorious 155th Marine Brigade. This notorious unit has a dark history, having been implicated in the horrific events in Bucha, where over 1,000 innocent lives were lost, a grim reminder of the brigade's brutal past. As Russia attempts to redeploy its elite forces to the Pokrovsk and Dobrapilya sectors, vulnerabilities emerge. The 155th Marine Brigade, although still categorized as an elite unit, has suffered severe losses, around 2,400 soldiers, since late 2022, leaving it much weakened compared to its former self. New recruits may fill the ranks, yet they lack the battle-hardened experience of their predecessors, possibly giving Ukraine a crucial tactical edge. With commanders analyzing the battlefield, they recognize the urgency of eliminating this shadow of its former self. Ukraine's forces are deploying strategies developed to mitigate the impact of these elite Marines. However, Putin's desire to reclaim territory makes the stakes immensely high. As the clashes intensify, Ukraine's drone operators are relentless, working around the clock to thwart reinforcements destined for the 155th Marine Brigade. Each strike brings a cacophony of explosions, echoing through the hills where the lives of countless soldiers hang in the balance. The atmosphere is charged with the smell of burnt fuel and the bitter tension as both sides prepare for the next clash. Will Ukraine emerge victorious against this elite unit, or will the enduring fighting spirit of the 155th claim more ground? The battle for Pokrovsk and Dobrapilya is only beginning, a lethal chess game where each move could tilt the scales of war. As the Russian forces struggle to regroup in the face of coordinated attacks, the clock ticks down. How long can they hold their ground? Putin, in his desperation, appears to be relying on the remnants of a once mighty brigade, attempting to infuse life into a dwindling force. But the question looms large: are they too far gone to reclaim their former glory? The audacious strike operations by Ukrainian forces may not just be about reclaiming land, they could reshape the entire narrative of this conflict. The tension is palpable, and the duel for supremacy stands ready to erupt at any moment. In the last part, we saw how Ukraine's drone operators relentlessly target Russian reinforcements trying to reach the battlefield near Pokrovsk. Those who survived these drone swarms then face deadly ambushes from higher ground, where Ukrainian artillery and soldiers wait. This multi-layered defense has plunged Russia into severe losses, with more suffering expected as the battle intensifies. But how deep does this crisis go for Russia? Brace yourself, because the human cost is staggering. According to The Economist, by early July of the past year, Russia had already lost 31,000 soldiers in a campaign that started the previous May. That figure is a grim shadow of the real toll. Historians and analysts suggest that the true number could be double what's reported, considering the brutal 4-month struggle over Pokrovsk alone. September only worsened Russia's fate, as fresh attacks against a now even more fortified Ukrainian defense have led to fresh waves of Russian soldiers trapped and lost in the deadly meat grinder. The question lingers: can anyone break Ukraine's ironclad lines? The answer grows bleaker by the day. Imagine the tension inside the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin, who has long controlled the narrative presented to the Russian people, faces an unexpected betrayal. The official propaganda machine, designed to keep hope alive, has crumbled under the weight of harsh realities. Voices within Putin's inner circle and Kremlin supporters are now whispering, or even shouting, that Russia's war is lost. How does a leader maintain control when even his strongest voices turn against him? Meanwhile, the Baltic Sea looms large as a strategic chessboard. Through the Kaliningrad exclave, Russia flexes hybrid warfare muscles designed to unsettle NATO. This vital waterway represents both power and vulnerability. Could the tension riding on these waves foreshadow yet greater conflicts? What happens when geographic advantage starts slipping through your fingers, and the enemy holds the high ground? The stage is set, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Imagine this: the echoes of Ukraine's relentless attacks on Russia's oil refineries are echoing louder than ever, crippling markets, sparking panic at gas pumps, and forcing Putin to beg Belarus for salvation. As shortages bite deeper, pro-Kremlin voices are shattering the illusion of victory, declaring Russia has already lost the war. The narrative inside Russia is shifting irreversibly, and not even Putin's iron grip can reverse it. Amid this chaos, the Baltic Sea looms as Russia's lifeline, vital for intimidating NATO through Kaliningrad's hybrid tactics. Now, picture the icy spray of Baltic waters crashing against Russian shores, the cold wind carrying the distant hum of U.S. surveillance planes. What if I told you America's elite hunters are circling Russia's borders, exposing Putin's Arctic dreams to total vulnerability? Can you feel the tension, the chill seeping through your coat as shadows shift beneath the waves? In the previous segment, we uncovered how Ukraine's refinery strikes have devastated Russia's economy, causing a gasoline meltdown with long lines, soaring prices, and shutdowns that humiliate Putin publicly. Desperate, he's turned to Belarus for aid, but even that lifeline is fraying. Now, let's dive deeper into Russia's exposed northern flank, the Baltic Sea, where U.S. predators are rewriting the rules of domination. Flashback to 2010, the sharp bite of winter frost on your cheeks, the rumble of gas pipelines shuddering as Russia coldly cut off Belarus over unpaid debts. The acrid scent of unpaid bills lingered in the frost-laden air. A reminder of fragile alliances cracking under greed. That fractured bond now haunts Putin, as he scrambles for reliability in this sea of betrayal. Will timeline the echo of that old sting define his future pleading? The Baltic Sea isn't just a stretch of icy blue for Russia, it's a pulsing artery for shadow fleet ships, smuggling secrets, and resources under NATO's watchful eye. Treated now as a NATO lake, Russia claws to maintain a foothold, but this water also whispers of dominance ambitions. Beneath its choppy surface lies Russia's pathway to the vast, icy Arctic front, where Putin envisions unchallenged reign in the frozen years ahead. Feel the salt spray stinging your skin, the gulls' cries piercing the air like warnings unheeded. Yet the United States won't let Putin's icy fantasy unfold. American submarine hunters swarm like sharks, their engines a low, menacing growl that rattles Russia's perimeter in the Baltic and beyond. This exposure leaves Putin's Arctic empire wide open, vulnerable to the chill winds of defeat. Newsweek unveiled the shock on September 30th. The U.S. isn't just sending reinforcements to Norway, a NATO ally, routine as a routine patrol. No, this is surgical precision. America's dispatched aircraft aren't mere fighters to buzz or deter. These are masterful predators designed to hunt submarines and spy on foes, lurking in Baltic depths. Enter the U.S. Navy's P-8 Poseidon, pronounced P-8. Several of these beasts now guard the skies over Norway, poised to thwart Russia's every move in the Baltic and crush its Arctic aspirations. The cold grip of fear tightens around you. The roar of jet engines a promise of inescapable scrutiny. Did you think Russia could hide forever? How does it feel for Putin, humbled by unseen shadows overhead? The Kyiv Independent lays bare the P-8's prowess. It's a titan for anti-submarine warfare. It tracks surface vessels with ruthless detail, gathering intelligence that shreds secrecy. Remember the Shadow Fleet? This plane is its nightmare, identifying and hounding those ghost ships, rendering Russia's cunning contraband game obsolete. The scent of diesel-heavy air wafts from fleet decks, only to fade under the Poseidon's relentless surveillance. The U.S. Naval Academy elaborates, the P-8 is a transformed Boeing 737-800 ERX, blending steadfast reliability with turbofan jets for blistering speed and unyielding strength. Imagine the smooth vibration beneath you, that powerful thrust slicing through cold resistance, outmatching any foe. Rhetorical surge floods in. What secrets does the P-8 expose next, casting Putin's shadow empire into perpetual twilight? And here's the twist that stings hardest: Russia's Arctic dreams, once a chilling boast, now dissipate like mist over thawing ice. Putin, exposed and cornered, faces humiliation in icy silence. But will Belarus's grudging aid mask the cracks, or will U.S. sentinels escalate, turning Russia's northern front into a frozen graveyard? Cliffhanger burns. As P-8's shadow loomed, what shocking revelation awaits in Putin's exposed underbelly? United in conflict, Ukraine has launched an audacious series of strikes against Russia, targeting a vital asset crucial for its war efforts, oil refineries. While battles rage on land, these strategic assaults strike at the heart of Russia's economy, causing severe setbacks. As of October 1st, reports indicate that Ukraine has successfully crippled an astonishing 38% of Russia's oil refining capacity. This staggering loss has put Vladimir Putin in a precarious position, pushing him to seek unconventional allies, crawling back to Belarus for assistance. Putin's situation is becoming increasingly desperate. With the refining capacity slashed, Ukraine's relentless attacks on Russia's oil infrastructure have left Putin scrambling for solutions. Can he salvage his power, or will the oil crisis spell the downfall of his regime? Since 2024, Ukraine has evolved its tactics. Instead of just hitting a refinery once and retreating, they strike repeatedly, ensuring repairs are nearly impossible. The damaged facilities become haunted by Ukraine's return, leaving Russia to grapple with an energy crisis. The chaos doesn't stop there. Ukraine's operations have rendered around 338,000 tons of oil refining lost each day, resulting in a significant drop, about 1 million tons, of gasoline production. This collapse has spiraled into a domestic market nightmare, with Russia now facing a staggering 20% deficit in gasoline supply. Does Putin still believe he can control the narrative when citizens are swarming gas stations only to find long queues and empty pumps? As the crisis deepens, the stark reality is setting in. Prices at the pump have skyrocketed, with some regions reporting costs nearly double the official rates. People are paying up to $4.52 per gallon, a bitter pill when official numbers claim $2.66. How long can the Kremlin maintain this fiction when the disparities are so glaring? In a twist, as desperate measures are implemented to manage supply, regions like Crimea impose strict purchase limits, squeezing citizens even further. Some consumers can obtain merely 2.5 gallons at a time. How do you fill your tank when the average vehicle requires much more? The condition is worsening, forcing gas stations to close. Russian families face a daily battle. Can they even get their children home from school? Amid this turmoil, Putin pretends all is well, even banning footage of destruction to keep the lid on panic. But how long can he hide the truth? As the gasoline crisis intensifies, major players in Russia's fuel industry are trying to reassure the public that this is temporary. Yet the cracks in the armor are becoming evident. A recession looms, with the state-owned bank projecting a contraction. What happens to a leader whose grip on power relies on the illusion of stability? In his most desperate hour, Putin turns to Belarus, a former puppet state now viewed as a potential lifeline. But can Belarus save Russia from the gripping fuel crisis? The balance of power is shifting, and Putin's requests are met with hesitation. How will this desperate partnership unfold? Belarus's reluctance stems from economics. The previous trade conditions favored them, and now, without import duties. Russia needs fuel, fast. But Belarus isn't easily swayed. Can Putin convince them to support him, or will he find his desperation backfire? As these nations navigate this perilous alliance, one undeniable conclusion unfolds. The impact of Ukraine's strategic strikes on Russian infrastructure is reshaping the entire landscape. This conflict won't merely alter borders, it threatens to topple the very foundations of Putin's power. Stay tuned to see how this epic saga evolves, as the stakes couldn't be higher, and the next twist could change everything. In a world where shadows of conflict loom, the P-8 Poseidon emerges as a formidable guardian of the skies. This aircraft is not just an agile flyer, but a sentinel that patrols vast expanses of the Baltic Sea, constantly vigilant. With its ability to soar up to 41,000 feet, it glides undetected, out of sight from Russian ships, ensuring that it remains an unseen eye in a dangerous game. But what if danger found the P-8? The aircraft is equipped with cutting-edge defenses, a missile approach warning system, sophisticated infrared countermeasures, and a specialized dispenser for countermeasure flares. It can deploy 129 sonobuoys, transforming the oceans into a vigilant expanse for hunting submarines. This prowess makes the P-8 an absolute nightmare for the enemy. Now, as tensions escalate, the US is sending reinforcements to Norway, directly aligning itself with Russia's border. So, how many P-8s are involved? Reports from Åsen Technical X suggest that 2 or 3 of these sleek machines landed at Norway's Gardermoen airport on September 23. And they're not just sitting still. These aircraft are already soaring through airspace where Russia fears their presence most. Recent reports highlight their missions off Kaliningrad, sending chills down the spines of Russian command. Imagine the anxiety in the Kremlin as U.S. naval eyes hover just off the coast. Although it's unclear if any P-8s have actually breached Russian airspace, a risk several drones and fighters took recently, the mere presence of these aircraft signals a critical shift in the battlefield dynamics. What strategic moves will Russia take as NATO's gaze sharpens? How much longer can they cloak their operations in the cold shadow of secrecy? As the stakes rise, and the echoes of engines thrum through the tension-filled air, a single question lingers: what will be the result of this high-stakes game of cat and mouse? With every flight, the narrative thickens, and the outcome could change the landscape of conflict entirely. Insurance against an unseen danger often manifests itself in the most unexpected forms. As NATO escalated its scrutiny of Russian moves in the Baltic Sea, an ominous shadow loomed over Putin's strategies. The deployment of American P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft suggested a significant shift in the balance of power. While staying at a safe distance from Russia's grasp, the very existence of these planes in the region exposed a sense of vulnerability in the Kremlin. NATO's tactical vigilance symbolizes a watchful defense, ready to react to any misstep by Russia, be it a hidden submarine or an unsuspecting naval vessel. This watchfulness might be the last nail in the coffin of any pretenses of control that Putin thought he had over the United States, especially over President Trump. The arrival of the P-8s was not merely a show of force, it was an unmistakable signal that the U.S. was firmly committed to defending its allies against potential aggression. In a series of escalating tensions, Trump reached a boiling point in August. In a reaction to fiery statements from Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's spokesperson, Trump made a bold declaration: 2 nuclear submarines would be dispatched to the Baltic as a countermeasure. Medvedev's combative rhetoric about tariffs and threats became a catalyst for military action, showcasing how words could ignite a carefully calibrated response. Trump's announcement on his personal social platform resonated with decisive firmness. He portrayed the move not just as a measurement of the Russian playbook but as a necessary step to ensure stability and security in the region. Could this series of military posturing be merely a back-and-forth exchange, or is it setting the stage for a more profound confrontation? The stakes were high, and the tension in the air was palpable. With submarines lurking beneath the surface and aircraft filling the skies, NATO's reinforcements began reshaping the strategic landscape. The Baltic Sea, a theater of potential conflict, held secrets beneath its waves, secrets that might alter the course of events, leaving everyone wondering what the next move would be. In the shadows of Europe's frozen frontiers, where icy winds howl like defiant warriors, the United States escalated its maritime showdown. Drawing from the deployment of unseen submarines lurking in the Baltic's depths, now a carrier strike group pierced the Arctic's veil. Imagine the thunderous rumble of war machines cutting through frigid waves, a chilling reminder that alliances are hardening. The appropriate regions promised by Donald Trump aren't mere words, they foreshadowed this bold move. Could this be the turning point where Russia's aggressive machinations crumble under the weight of Western resolve? Building on that provocative expansion, where U.S. subs prowled unseen beneath the Baltic, amplifying NATO's defense, another chapter unfolded. About a month passed, and America dispatched a powerful carrier group toward the Arctic's icy expanse. This wasn't a lone sortie, it joined Norwegian forces in joint drills, a symphony of steel and strategy. Picture the relentless crash of waves against hulls, the metallic tang of sea spray mingling with diesel fumes, signaling unity in the face of Russian provocations. 14,000 mariners and sailors converged, their synchronized movements a rebuke to Putin's overreach. The group included the USS Mahan and USS Bainbridge, agile Arleigh Burke-class destroyers once tethered to the USS Gerald R. Ford. They ventured into the Barents Sea, off Russia's very doorstep, turning this vast water into a battleground of wills. But here's the twist, this wasn't permanent. After the exercise, they withdrew, leaving a lingering echo. Still, it screamed America's readiness to clash head-on, humiliating Putin's illusions of dominance. Is the Arctic now a NATO stronghold, or just a prelude to deeper chaos? The tension escalates as we recall that carrier group's Arctic intrusion, where destroyers danced on the edge of Russia's borders, exposing the fragility of Putin's Arctic dreams. Now, with US P-8 Poseidon aircraft recessed to Norway, the game changes forever. Named after the mythical god of oceans, these propeller-driven hunters slice through the sky, their engines a low roar that drowns out Russian propaganda. Feel the vibration in the air, the cold rush of high-altitude winds against sleek fuselages, as they surveil every ripple below. This deployment inscribes a stone-cold message: America won't yield the Baltic NATO lake to Putin's whims. NATO gains omnipresent eyes and ears, tracking submarines and surface threats alike. The submarine hunters hover at Russia's periphery, unblinking. What ominous secrets will they unearth next, crumbling the Kremlin's facade of invincibility? From this aerial supremacy, where MQ-9 Reaper-like P-8s guard the waves, the implications for Vladimir Putin grow dire. Just 2 or 3 such aircraft in Norway bolster Baltic Sea air policing immensely, a dagger to Russia's hybrid tactics. But it's not new, America has been a steadfast ally. Back in July, Newsweek highlighted, a similar P-8 took off from Iceland's Keflavik airbase, plunging into Baltic Sentry, NATO's eagle-eyed operation. Now, in Norway, they amplify this vigilance, turning the Arctic into a web of watchful gaze. Imagine the screeches of alarms in Russian command centers, the sweaty palms gripping controls as these birds circle relentlessly. Could this expose Russia's darkest maneuvers, forcing a humiliated retreat and reshaping global power? The story twists as alliances tighten, but will Putin strike back, unveiling his true desperation? Delving deeper into this aerial crucible, where P-8s from Iceland once shadowed Baltic Sentry's airspace, the Norway base marks a seismic shift. These ocean sentinels, equipped for anti-submarine warfare, patrol the Baltic and Gulf of Finland, their sonars and radar piercing depths like hungry predators. The US isn't alone, NATO's collective might converges here, countering Russia's destabilizing games. Hear the whirl of propellers slicing daylight, smell the faint varnish of aircraft fuselages fresh from the hangar, as crews ready for the unknown. Putin's ambitions in these waters face annihilation, his Arctic fantasies mocked by unstoppable surveillance. Yet, what if this exposes a hidden Russian weapon, flipping the script and exposing Western vulnerabilities? The humiliation builds, but is there a silver bullet Russia has been concealing, ready to twist the narrative? Week after week, Ukraine has been striking Russia right where it hurts most. We're not just talking about battlefield losses in the thousands, though those pile up. Nor are we referring to the destruction of countless tanks and air defenses. No, Ukraine's genius move is its relentless assaults on Russia's oil refineries. These attacks have slashed Russia's refining power by a shocking 38%, leaving Vladimir Putin scrambling and begging Belarus for aid. Ukraine has claimed it all: fuel production plummeting, domestic shortages exploding, prices soaring, and queues snaking out endlessly. Repairing the damage feels impossible with sanctions choking parts and Ukraine hitting again and again. Putin hides the truth, but his people feel the fuel scarcity deeply. Gasoline runs short, pumps run dry, and the economy teeters toward recession. In desperation, Belarus might not even have enough to bail him out. In the chill Norwegian winds, where the Arctic's icy grip claws at the skin and the hum of distant engines echoes like a predator's growl, something sinister lurks. Ukraine's bombs have exposed Russia's shadow fleet, not just evading oil bans, but launching drones into European skies. But what does this have to do with US P-8 Poseidon aircraft touching down in Norway? These planes, sleek gray giants slicing through frosty air with a low, throbbing rumble, aren't built for dodging drones directly. Could they even spot them lurking beneath the waves? It's a puzzle that hints at deeper threats, isn't it? One that leaves you gripping your seat, wondering if Putin's empire is unraveling faster than he can admit. Imagine the icy sting of Nordic winds whipping across your cheeks, the salt tang of the Baltic Sea clinging to the air like unspoken threats, as US P-8 Poseidons, those MQ-8 surveillance beasts, arrive not for aerial duels, but to pierce Russia's deceptive veil. Ukraine's bombs didn't just cripple refineries, they unveiled Russia's shadow ships as drone launch pads, breaching European borders. Can these planes prove it, spotting vessels amid crashing waves and foggy horizons, humiliating Putin's lies? The tension builds, as NATO eyes not just drones, but Russia's hidden undersea warriors. What subterranean nightmares await in those dark, fathomless depths? Ukraine has shredded Russia's fuel lifeline, sparking chaos that Putin couldn't conceal. But now, focus shifts to those shadow ships launching drone assaults, and why P-8s patrol Norwegian skies. Benchmarking against Ukrainian claims, these planes might expose Russia's deceit visually, videos of ships disgorging drones in midnight storms, the acrid smoke of launches poisoning debris. Yet, a surprising twist emerges: submarines are the true quarry. Russia's Baltic fleet once bristled with over 100 submarines during Cold War frosts, but now, only one diesel-electric attack sub confirmed, a pitiful echo of glory. Why deploy up to 3 P-8s for that lone wolf? They hunt more, perhaps shadowy vessels weaving through Norwegian vigilance, allying with Belarus amid fuel desperation. But wait, NATO's gaze lifts to another frontier, the Arctic, where Russia's ambitions ignite a frozen powder keg. Russia's Baltic submarine tally has dwindled from 130 Soviet-era giants patrolling icy currents to just one acknowledged diesel-electric craft, yet US P-8 Poseidons flood Nordic airspace. Does this signal lurking aggressors, their hulls groaning under crushing depths and silent propellers slicing water? One view paints Russia transparent, but skepticism whispers of hidden fleets evading detection. Tackling the shadow fleet strengthens NATO defenses, but the real scare? Russia's Arctic push, stretching into Norway's icy fringes. Could these planes weave a web against incursions, or will they expose bluffs? Imagine torpedoes lurking in a roar-lit abyss, the chill breath of danger drawing closer, forcing NATO's hand. NATO's P-8 deployment counters Russia's Baltic meddling, but the Arctic looms larger, a vast, howling expanse where sea ice cracks like thunder, and blizzards howl warnings. Norway, with its Arctic claims, bridges NATO's attention, born from Russia's recent maneuvers. Yet, is this blossoming standoff a smokescreen for deeper intrusions? As refineries burn and drones buzz, one twist chills the bone: what if Russia's shadow plans unleash a cascade of secrets, toppling Putin's facade just as fuel runs out? You're left breathless, peering into the abyss. Will NATO strike first, or drown in revelations? NATO's Arctic scrutiny doesn't stop at submarines, it hammers Russia's escalating influence in these frozen wastes, where every glacier shift feels like an ominous whisper. For years, Russia has poured resources into northern dominance, building bases that creak under eternal frost. Norway's Arctic slice intersects here, tethering it to NATO's vigilant eye. The P-8s, with sonar pings rebounding in frigid seawater, could expose vulnerabilities or ignite conflicts. Unexpectedly, these planes might unwind Putin's grand designs, projecting NATO strength against loneliness. But horror builds: could hidden Russian assets, cloaked in snowstorms, strike unseen? What territorial gambles hide in this white void, promising humiliation for the aggressor? In Norway's Arctic reaches, where blizzards buffet like fists and the ground feels brittle underfoot, Russia's maneuvers collide with NATO's probe. Having lost 338,000 tons of daily refining output, Putin clings to Belarus amid gasoline geysers at pumps, jumping 40% since early 2025 for AI-92 at $880 per ton, AI-95 at $850, straining citizens to desperation. Shadows lengthen as shadow fleets depart, submarines tiptoe through defile, and P-8s hover. Yet, here's the shocking inversion: is Russia overextended, its Arctic investments a trap rather than a triumph? Diving into records from the Carnegie Endowment, that single Baltic sub begs mockery: why the fanfare? Could hidden threats or alliances be puffery, waiting to burst? Suspense coils tighter, as fuel queues freeze drivers. Will a frozen front thaw Putin's resolve or freeze his grasp forever? In the frigid expanse of the Arctic, a fierce geopolitical battle rages, unseen by many but felt by all. As NATO eyes the shifting power dynamics, one country emerges as a vital player: Norway. Nestled in the heart of this icy frontier, Norway's stakes in the Arctic are high. The significance lies not just in local waters but in a strategic front that intertwines with Russia's ambitions, as the nation builds a militarized presence, asserting its dominance. The Arctic Circle weaves directly through Nordland County, affording Norway a substantial interest in the developments of this tumultuous region. This strategic positioning doesn't just affect Norway, it extends NATO's reach into the Arctic as well. The connection is more profound when considering the Baltic Sea, linked to the Arctic through the White Sea-Baltic Canal. This canal, established by Russia in 1933, symbolizes the Kremlin's calculated maneuvering, forming a bridge between regions that serve both its interests and ambitions. Is the spotlight on the Baltic merely a localized focus, or is it part of a broader strategy? With America's P-8 Poseidon aircraft scanning the Baltic, insights gleaned there could echo across the Arctic. These high-tech planes possess the ability to hunt submarines, which is crucial given the current dynamics. The Russian Northern Fleet, operationally dominant in the Arctic, comprises an impressive arsenal of submarines, approximately 25 of these elusive vessels compared to just 20 surface ships. This disparity poses a critical threat, as NATO must discern the movements of these submarines in Arctic waters. The canal enables these stealthy vessels to traverse between the Arctic and Baltic undetected, creating a pressing need for NATO to monitor these strategic routes closely. With newly deployed P-8s in Norway, the alliance is poised to gain greater visibility and intelligence on any Russian activities. But the stakes extend beyond military maneuverings. Russia's ambition to exploit the Arctic is no secret. The melting ice, a direct consequence of climate change, unveils new shipping lanes and potential wealth in natural resources. As these developments unfold, the Arctic transforms from a remote region into the centerpiece of an international chess game, where every maneuver could tilt the balance of power. Will Norway and NATO successfully counter Russia's gambit, or are they destined to play a reactive game in a theater of looming uncertainties? As tensions rise and the icy grasp of the Arctic holds its secrets, the world watches closely, for the outcomes of these power plays may change the global landscape forever. The next chapter in this Cold War is just beginning. What will unfold in the frozen battleground of the Arctic? As Ukraine continues its strategic assaults on Russian infrastructure, the battlefield extends beyond soldiers and tanks. A critical front has emerged: Russia's oil refineries. Ukraine's precision strikes have severely weakened Russia's refining capacity, taking an astonishing 38% offline, and forcing President Vladimir Putin to seek desperate assistance from Belarus. Imagine a landscape where oil, once a relentless flow, now trickles like a dried-up riverbed, plunging Russia into an unprecedented gasoline crisis. In a striking article released by the Kyiv Post, it was illuminated that Ukraine's targeted attacks have not only inflicted damage but have also hindered the country's efforts to recover. With each strike, Ukraine has adapted its tactics, bombing refineries repeatedly, leaving Russia reeling and unable to fully repair its infrastructure. The result? Gasoline production has plummeted, with daily outputs crashing by nearly 1 million tons. As queues at gas stations stretch around the bloc, citizens are confronted by the stench of frustration, the air thick with anxiety as they wait, unsure if they'll even be able to fill their tanks. The repercussions ripple through Russia, where reports indicate a staggering 20% shortage in gasoline supply. With the specter of discontent looming, Putin's carefully curated narratives of victory and stability begin to crumble under the weight of reality. Public sentiment can only be managed for so long when a nation renowned for its oil is forced into long lines just to fill a tank. The crisis has escalated across the country, with climbing prices reaching up to $4.52 per gallon in some areas, twice the official price. Such disparities expose the deception within the Kremlin's propaganda. Reports reveal that since the start of 2025, wholesale gasoline prices have surged over 40%, further squeezing ordinary citizens as costs continue to soar. The people's patience wears thin as they grapple with affordability and availability, realizing the once reliable flow of resources is now trickling away. In response, Putin's call for aid has prompted him to turn to Belarus, a nation he once controlled with an iron fist. Desperate to salvage his reign, he faces stark challenges. While Belarus may express willingness to assist, it is hindered by its own limitations. The suspension of import duties from the Eurasian Economic Commission means Russia can bypass taxes when importing oil products from Belarus, yet Belarus is cautious, not wanting to jeopardize its own resources. Amid this turmoil, tensions thicken, and further conflicts on the horizon signal the potential for unrest. Families experience disruptions, and communities feel the strain, with petrol pumps running dry. The average Russian can only fill half a tank, a poignant symbol of a regime unraveling. As we witness these developments, critical questions arise: will Belarus come to Putin's aid, or will it expose the limits of Russian influence? And as military and economic pressures mount, will this spell disaster for Putin's leadership? The world holds its breath, caught in the currents of an unfolding saga, aware that tomorrow could bring monumental shifts in power. Each day will unveil new challenges, as the very fabric of Russian society begins to fray under the strain of war and its consequences. In a stunning pivot, the United States has thrown a lifeline to Ukraine, enabling it to target critical energy infrastructure deep within Russia. This move is set to unleash a torrent of consequences, potentially paving the way for a decisive shift in the ongoing conflict. As of October 1st, reports from major outlets like Reuters and the Wall Street Journal have detailed how American intelligence will assist Ukraine in locating Russian oil refineries and energy sites well beyond the front line. This could dramatically change the tide of the war. The significance of this decision is monumental. Observers of the conflict have witnessed Ukraine executing precise strikes against Russian energy assets for some time. These strategic drone attacks have steadily crippled Russia's oil facilities, fueling a scarcity that is now setting the stage for chaos within Russia itself. Although Ukraine's maneuvers required meticulous planning amidst relentless assaults, the recent strikes have begun to resonate deeply. Data from September 28 reveals that Ukraine's offensive has devastated approximately 38% of Russia's oil refining capacity, equating to a staggering loss of around 338,000 tons of oil per day. Overall gasoline production has plummeted by 1 million tons, a clear indication of the mounting turmoil. Reports from analytics agency Ciala point out that an incredible 70% of this decline is directly linked to Ukraine's drone operations. As Russia grapples with this escalation, the repercussions are not just logistical, they ripple through the very fabric of society. The Russian domestic fuel market faces shortages of nearly 20%, with everyday citizens experiencing fuel scarcity and surging prices. Across the nation, people find themselves waiting in long lines, feeling the pinch of what was once an abundant resource. Now, plunging into crisis, Putin is scrambling to maintain control. How does one lead when the basic needs of the populace are going unmet? As fuel stations begin to run dry, the desperation for gasoline has hit even the most remote corners of the country. In a bizarre twist, while Russia touts its resilience and strength, the reality tells a different story, one of chaos accompanied by a rising tide of dissatisfaction. Imagine the tension that fills the air as queues with restless citizens form outside gas stations. The roar of engines waiting to fill up punctuates the silence of long-held belief in national supremacy. It's a stark contrast to Putin's narrative of power and control. With these vital sources rapidly disappearing, what comes next? Will Belarus, a country once viewed as an ally, step in to provide a lifeline, or will its own limitations hinder any possible salvation? The stage is set for a dramatic showdown, as the inner workings of Russia's economy begin to unravel, revealing vulnerabilities that threaten Putin's grip on power and sowing the seeds for a greater upheaval. Could it be that Ukraine's calculated strikes, supported by U.S. intelligence, might just be the catalyst for an evolution in this brutal conflict? As the saga unfolds, every day carries a new tension and question. How long until the cracks in this facade widen, leading to unforeseen consequences for the Kremlin? Every week, the tides of conflict in Eastern Europe shift dramatically. While we often hear about the heavy tolls on the battlefield, there's a less visible yet equally devastating battle unfolding, a war waged on resources. Ukraine is relentlessly targeting Russia's oil refineries, a strategic move that has dealt a severe blow to its adversaries' energy capabilities. As reported, of Russia's refining capacity, an astonishing 38% has been neutralized, inflicting desperation upon President Vladimir Putin. This situation is unprecedented. For the first time, he has found himself reaching out to Belarus for assistance, a nation previously regarded as a mere extension of his influence. Imagine the depth of this crisis. Russia now faces a staggering reduction in oil production, losing around 338,000 tons daily. This translates to a gasoline output plunge of nearly 1 million tons, sparked primarily by relentless Ukrainian drone strikes, which account for about 70% of this loss. The ramifications are profound. The Kremlin's military logistics are jeopardized, making it increasingly difficult to deploy troops and supplies effectively. As the clock ticks on, Russia's domestic fuel market grapples with unprecedented shortages. It's reported that availability is roughly 20% lower than what's needed, tormenting the Russian public. Lines stretch around gas stations like serpents, with citizens facing long waits, some even spending nights in their vehicles to secure fuel for essential journeys. Community reports indicate a rise in a black market for fuel, with desperate individuals resorting to clandestine operations just to fill their tanks. Vladislav Inozemtsev, an economist, highlights the fallout. Over 300 independent gas retailers have closed their doors since May. The survivors, in an attempt to sustain operations, are implementing radical measures, restricting purchases, banning fuel can refills, or limiting sales to loyalty card holders. Moscow is now poised to impose further restrictions, this time on diesel exports, signaling that the situation may escalate into more dire territory. Even cities far from the front lines, like Nizhny Novgorod, are feeling the pressure. The mayor has reported waiting times exceeding 100 cars at some stations. In the far reaches of Russia, governors have even made urgent calls to suspend panic buying, but it appears the crisis is only gathering momentum. What of the industries reliant on fuel? How long can this economic strain continue before it shatters the illusion of stability that Putin has worked so hard to project? The future seems increasingly uncertain, with every second counting down to an uncharted reckoning. In the distant corners of Russia, thousands of miles away from the chaos of war, citizens struggle with an unexpected crisis. Fuel is becoming a rare commodity, forcing local leaders like Governor Alexei Maslov to urgently urge people to stop panic buying. But this fuel shortage isn't just a minor inconvenience for individuals, its ramifications extend deep into the Kremlin's military operations. On September 25, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, pointed out a grim reality. He revealed how Russia's war machine is faltering due to a critical fuel shortage. The capabilities of the enemy's military-industrial complex have been significantly reduced, he noted. This fuel crisis directly affects logistics and the supply of their army. Even the staunchest supporters of Putin can no longer ignore the dire situation. Notable propagandist Maxim Kalashnikov openly acknowledged, the situation is deteriorating. The fuel crisis is real. Discussions about rationing and fuel cards are growing louder. Inside the Kremlin, tension fills the air as officials scramble to devise solutions. Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak is feverishly working on a plan to waive import duties on fuel from countries like China and South Korea. In a desperate bid to extend their dwindling supplies, they're even considering reintroducing an octane-boosting additive banned back in 2016. With imports from Belarus already surging by 36% compared to the previous year, Russia seems increasingly reliant on its smaller neighbor to offset its production woes. Yet amid these frantic measures, Kremlin officials maintain a facade of control. Novak insists that the situation is under control. However, the unsettling truth speaks volumes, and the Russian populace is acutely aware of the disparities between the government's narrative and their daily realities. As prices soar and rationing discussions grow more volatile, could the grip on power within the Kremlin be slipping? The reality is stark, citizens can see the price of essentials rising daily, and the facade of normalcy is dangerously fraying. What will happen if the turmoil continues to escalate? In a dramatic turn of events in Eastern Europe, Ukraine has been mounting relentless attacks against Russia, revealing a struggle far beyond battlefield skirmishes. Imagine this, while we often hear about troop casualties and military tactics, the true battlefield is where Russia's economy takes the hardest hits, specifically, its oil refineries. Week after week, Ukraine has escalated its offensive, focusing on crippling Russia's oil production capabilities. This is no mere annoyance, it's a well-planned strategy that has resulted in a staggering 38% reduction in Russia's refining capacity, causing panic among the Kremlin's ranks. How has Ukraine pulled off this audacious feat? It has targeted essential infrastructure repeatedly, making repairs nearly impossible. Each strike is not just a single blow, it's part of a relentless hammering that leaves Russia gasping for resources. As Vladimir Putin scrambles for answers, he turns to Belarus, a nation once perceived as a puppet state, but even this alliance comes with complications. Reports indicate that Belarus might offer assistance, but its own struggles may limit how much aid it can effectively provide. The irony? A supposed oil powerhouse like Russia is facing gasoline shortages so severe that citizens queue for hours for a basic necessity. The conflict has cracked open the facade of stability the Kremlin has tried to maintain. Imagine the frustration brewing among the Russian populace. As fuel prices skyrocket, some regions report prices as high as $4.52 a gallon, Putin's reassurances ring hollow. Despite state media proclaiming that all is well, the reality is undeniable. In an era of increasing scarcity and rising costs, the average citizen bears the direct consequences of a failing economy. Even as Kremlin officials defend their handling of the situation, the truth splashed across the news and felt at the gas pumps tells a different story, a narrative woven with tension and uncertainty. Moreover, the government's proposed increase in value-added tax to 22% is seen as an act of desperation. This move is meant to battle a staggering budget deficit of $61.1 billion. But can such measures truly mask deeper economic decay? Ukrainians, wielding intelligence and their increasingly effective drone technology, smoothly exploit Russia's vulnerabilities, and they do so with remarkable ingenuity. Despite facing relentless assaults themselves, the Ukrainian forces remain steadfast. They have been exceptional in dismantling key parts of Russia's oil production network while defending their homeland. As the clock ticks and the war drags on, Ukraine's strikes grow ever more lethal, creating a perception shift among ordinary Russians. This is not just a war for territory, it's also a battle for morale, with far-reaching implications that extend well beyond the battlefield. The outcome? An economy on the brink and a leadership increasingly desperate to maintain control. And as the situation unfolds, we are left to wonder, how much longer can Putin hold on to power when the very foundations of his regime are crumbling beneath him? As the lines between military might and economic fortitude blur, the stage is set for impending conflict, not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of the Russian people. What will the consequences be when they awaken to the truth of their plight? In the midst of relentless drone and missile strikes, coupled with the urgent need to defend critical areas like Pokrovsk and Donetsk, Ukraine's forces have orchestrated a formidable campaign against Russia's oil infrastructure. This audacious strategy is yielding significant dividends as Ukraine prepares to claim its most substantial intelligence boon of the conflict so far. Meanwhile, the United States is reportedly encouraging NATO allies to enhance their intelligence-sharing efforts with Kyiv. From August 1 to September 19, there were at least 21 attacks on Russian oil refineries, with many enduring multiple strikes within a single week. The month of September alone saw 4 prominent facilities under heavy assault. Among them, the Kyiv plant in Kirishi, located in the Leningrad region, stood out as Russia's second-largest refinery, alongside the Rosneft Ryazan refinery, one of the country's top 5. Following these precision attacks, both facilities were compelled to halt operations. President Volodymyr Zelensky captured the significance of this coordinated offensive, underscoring that the most impactful sanctions manifest as flames engulfing Russia's oil refineries and depots. Every fire restricts the war, he affirmed. Now, consider the potential escalation if Ukraine receives American intelligence support. The U.S. not only possesses unparalleled military strength but excels in intelligence capabilities, having successfully gathered critical information for numerous military operations historically. While Ukraine has already reaped some benefits of U.S. intelligence regarding battlefield conditions, crucial data concerning targets within Russia's territory is about to be unlocked. An official recently informed the Wall Street Journal that intelligence agencies are on the brink of finalizing approval from the White House, poised to assist the Ukrainian military in targeting Russian facilities with even more precision. This brings us to a pivotal question: how much devastation can Ukraine unleash on Russia's oil industry if American support transforms from mere battlefield insights to direct intelligence on Russian assets? With the clock ticking and conditions deteriorating rapidly for Russia, time is of the essence. But will that approval come in time, or will it slip away like smoke through a cracked window? In a stunning twist, Ukraine prepares to receive a monumental intelligence boost that could alter the course of the ongoing conflict. Official sources reveal that the wait is nearly over, as approval from the White House is imminent. Just imagine, in a matter of hours, Ukrainians might gain access to crucial intelligence on high-value targets deep within Russian territory. The sudden influx of information could redefine Ukraine's battle dynamics. What if this intelligence shift empowers Ukrainian forces to launch precision strikes unlike anything we've seen? With enhanced situational awareness, they may target vital energy facilities in Russia, amplifying the chaos and devastation. The very lifeblood of the Russian economy, its oil and fuel infrastructure, could be targeted, triggering catastrophic shortages and leaving the Kremlin scrambling for solutions. The weight of uncertainty would hang heavily over Russian leaders as they struggle to combat the onslaught. The American support signals a significant pivot in foreign policy. Previously, President Trump sought to broker peace, advocating for territorial compromises that favored Russia. Yet, an unexpected reawakening of resolve now shifts the focus entirely. This new strategy marks a bold stand against Russian aggression and could serve as a powerful warning to the Kremlin. But what happens when this newfound intelligence meets the battlefield? As intelligence from NATO allies combines with U.S. insights, will Ukrainian forces capitalize on weaknesses previously hidden? And how will Russia's already depleted defenses withstand such a strategic overhaul? The stakes have never been higher, and the battlefield dynamic is set for radical change. As Russia reels from the ongoing Ukrainian assault, one must wonder, is the Kremlin prepared for this transformative turn? The chaos unfolding could mean that the days of unchecked Russian operations are numbered, potentially leading to internal strife and a tightening grip on power by Putin amid growing discontent. In recent weeks, a seismic shift has taken place in the landscape of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. After a period of indecisiveness, the tides are turning. As Trump's frustration with Putin intensifies, he is openly aligning himself with Ukraine. In early September, a significant military aid package for Ukraine, supported by NATO nations, was approved, marking a pivotal moment in the conflict. Then, on September 23, Trump made a powerful statement on his social media platform, declaring that Ukraine has the potential to reclaim all the territory lost to Russia. After understanding the Ukraine/Russia military and economic situation, I believe Ukraine can fight to recover its land, he proclaimed. He emphasized the importance of time, patience, and unwavering financial support from Europe and NATO in restoring Ukraine's original borders. But there's more. Trump has labeled Russia a paper tiger, chastising its ineffective military actions and committing to strengthen U.S. support for NATO and Ukraine. While his willingness to share intelligence signals a readiness for decisive action, a formidable challenge looms large. Ukraine needs cutting-edge weaponry for deep strikes against Russian infrastructure. Although its drones have achieved some success, they are insufficient for the extensive damage required to destabilize the Kremlin effectively. Furthermore, Ukraine faces hurdles in deploying some of the weapons from Western allies. For instance, there are restrictions on firing ATACMS missiles, including the need for U.S. approval before each launch. This limitation hinders Ukraine's operational efficacy and adds layers of complexity to its military strategy. So, how will Ukraine navigate these constraints while engaging in a fight that could redefine its future? The stage is set for a dramatic turn of events, one where the fate of nations hangs in the balance. As the conflict drags on, tensions rise, and every move could alter the course history takes. The world watches as both sides prepare for an uncertain and dangerous escalation. What will the coming weeks reveal? Previously, we discussed how Ukraine's access to Western missile technology faces limits. Missiles like ATACMS and Storm Shadow have a capped range. Deliveries remain restricted, meaning Ukraine's reach into Russian territory is constrained, especially for deep strikes hundreds of miles away. But what if everything changed overnight? Imagine Ukraine suddenly armed with one of the most formidable cruise missiles ever built, the Tomahawk. This weapon isn't just a missile, it's a game changer. With a staggering range of up to 1,000 miles, it could strike deep inside Russia, reaching vital targets including those far beyond the front lines, even near Moscow itself. Would Russia's defenses even know what hit them? Tomahawks move like shadows in the sky. Gliding low to avoid radar, these missiles fly at speeds around 570 miles per hour. Their agility is jaw-dropping, they execute twists and turns in midair, dodging interceptors with ease. Each missile carries a bomb powerful enough to obliterate entire buildings. Fuel depots, airports, oil refineries, nothing stands a chance. The explosion turns steel and concrete to dust and rubble in seconds. For decades, Tomahawks have carved their deadly path in conflicts worldwide, devastating enemy infrastructure with terrifying precision. Could the arrival of Tomahawks in Ukraine's arsenal tip the scales in an explosive way? Might they unleash a storm inside Russian territory unlike anything before? With Ukraine's own long-range missile project still in early stages, these weapons could turbocharge its strike capability overnight. But what would this mean for the balance of power, and for the people caught in the crossfire? The stakes are enormous, and the answer lies just beyond the horizon. These missiles have struck targets in places like Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Syria. Brutal proof of their power. Can you hear the distant roar of engines? Smell the acrid smoke from devastated sites? Will Russia's defenses crumble next? The air thickens with tension as whispers of U.S. involvement grow louder. Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News on September 28 / it's something the president is going to make the final determination on. What the president is going to do is what's in the best interest of the United States of America / he added / I know we're having conversations this very minute about the issue / no final call yet, but the U.S. weighs granting key of these deadly tools. Or perhaps the Barracuda variant, with subsonic speeds and ranges up to 580 miles. Germany promises more long-range aid too. Armed with American smarts guiding them, Ukraine's fighters could become unstoppable. Picture this, fully equipped, fully aware. They target Russia's heart, striking energy veins one by one. A chain reaction ignites. More blows to oil sites. Production plunges further. Economy crumbles under the weight. Living standards drop. People's wallets shrink. Feel the anger rising, like a storm brewing. Blame points straight to the Kremlin. Even Putin's staunch allies, oligarchs and nationalists, might finally crack. Is this the spark that topples his throne? But what if desperation drives darker choices? Could Putin unleash something we can't foresee? In a world where the tide of conflict shifts unexpectedly, a storm brews on the horizon for Russia. As the pressure mounts from relentless strikes, Ukraine is chipping away at Russia's energy backbone. But what happens when desperation drives a world leader into uncharted territories? Imagine if Ukraine were to unleash a flurry of advanced missiles deep into Russia's heart, targeting the very lifeblood of its economy. Recent reports highlight how Ukraine's strategic assaults have crippled nearly 38% of Russia's refining capacity, forcing President Putin into a corner. The sound of engines revving in long lines of cars tells a story of despair, people waiting for gasoline that's now hard to find. Every day, they witness a decrease in supply, fueling unrest and igniting voices of dissent against the Kremlin. This discontent is not just a ripple, it's a wave. As frustration mounts, even Putin's staunchest allies, the oligarchs and nationalists, start reconsidering their unwavering support. The very foundation of his power is shaken, as citizens question the narrative fed to them. But it's not just the gas queues to blame. Inflation has soared, with prices at the pump approaching nearly double what is officially reported. Each dollar spent feels heavier, each trip to the pump a reminder of lost stability. In what could be a game-changing moment, Belarus, once a loyal ally, now finds itself in a precarious position. Can it extend a lifeline to an ailing Russia, or is it too caught in its own challenges? After all, the fraying relationship comes at a time when Russian desperation is palpable. They've resorted to suspending import taxes to ease their fuel woes, but can this actually turn the tide? Imagine the chaos if America decides to supply Ukraine with crucial long-range missiles. These weapons, with their pinpoint accuracy, threaten to decimate additional energy infrastructures, plunging Russia deeper into crisis. As fuel supplies dwindle, will the Russian populace rise against their leader? When ultimatums boil over, what choices will Putin have left? The walls may be closing in, forcing him to negotiate now or face irreparable damage. This potential shift could mark the end of a bloody standoff. How long can this facade of control last when every passing moment reveals the cracks beneath? Join us as we delve into this unfolding saga. From the pulse of the streets in Russia to the decision-making corridors in Kiev and beyond, we explore the intricacies of this evolving crisis. The fate of nations hangs in the balance, and the repercussions will be felt far and wide. Stay tuned for more insights as events unfold. Imagine the shock rippling through the Kremlin halls, the hiss of leaking oil pipes echoing in the night air, the acrid stench of fires burning out of control, and the desperate scramble as Russia's fuel lifeline crumbles under relentless Ukrainian strikes. Is this the turning point that cracks Putin's iron grip, leaving his people gasping for gas and his empire on its knees? Week after week, Ukraine has been striking Russia right where it hurts most. It's not just the battlefield casualties mounting by the thousands. Nor is it solely the armored tanks and air defenses shredded in droves. Ukraine's true genius lies in its unyielding assaults on Russia's oil refineries. These hits have slashed Russia's refining power so dramatically that Vladimir Putin now stands on the brink of desperation. With no other path left, he's resorted to begging Belarus for aid as Ukraine erodes his foundations. And when we say everything, we mean it. On October 1st, the Kyiv Post revealed that Ukrainian strikes have wiped out a staggering 38% of Russia's refining capacity. That's nearly a third of their oil processing vanished, lost to some distant horizon until Russia scraps together fixes amid the chaos. Repairing it? Easier said than done. Ukraine has pummeled these refineries since 2024, but early attacks didn't unleash this havoc. Now, their tactic has evolved. They don't just cripple a site and retreat. They return, striking again and again, denying Russia any recovery window. Fixes crawl forward, slowly. Yet, by the time one section heals, another shatters, demanding more. Compounding this, vital parts grow scarce under Western sanctions. Thanks to this lethal mix of bans and strategy, Russia has forfeited 38% of its refining might, with losses likely spiraling further as the Ukraine conflict rages on. Numbers paint the picture. As per the Kyiv Post, drawing from market experts at Sila, Ukraine's attacks have yanked 338,000 tons of daily oil refining offline. This tanks Russia's gasoline output by roughly 1 million tons, hammering their domestic fuel markets into turmoil. Currently, as the Kyiv Post reports, Russia falls 20% short on its gasoline needs, undermining Putin's propaganda machine. He spins lies, hoards truths, claims victory over a crumbling foe. How effective is that when your populace waits in endless lines, hands outstretched for fuel that flowed freely before? Day by day, the crisis deepens, exposes the deceit. Forbes contributor David Hambling detailed this on September 29, noting how scant gasoline in remote, insignificant regions has ballooned into nationwide shortages. Citizens endure soaring prices, hour-long queues, ration pumps, even dry wells, a new harsh reality proving Putin's war boasts are outright fiction. Pump prices sting especially. Hambling highlights folks shelling out up to $4.52 per gallon in spots, nearing twice Russia's touted average of $2.66, a clear ruse, as officials report low figures while people bleed cash. Euromaidan Press adds fuel on October 1st, reporting wholesale gasoline spikes over 40% since early 2025. AI 92 grade fetches $880 per ton now. AI 95 at $850. Inflation pushed straight to consumers, if stations can even stock up in this scarcity. Amid this fuel famine, Putin slithers to Belarus for salvation. But save that revelation. Shortages surge so severely that curfews hit over 20 regions. Occupied Crimea caps buys at 30 liters, about 6.5 gallons, per person, forcing rationing as tight as 10 liters elsewhere. That's barely over 2 gallons to fill your average family car, half a tank at best, leaving drivers stranded mid-journey. Hambling expands, some chains limit not just amounts, but buyers. One serves only commercial fleets with cards, another bans cardholders entirely, hoarding for the privileged. Panic fuels these desperate measures. Gas stations shutter one by one. Parents hitchhike home without kids some places. Authorities ban refinery drone footage to mute outrage, yet the truth seeps out. One of the world's top oil producers runs dry. Why? Ukraine's systematic refinery destruction screams it. The Moscow Times headline from October 1st cuts deep, Putin can't hide Russia's gasoline crisis. Fuel magnates fluff it as fleeting, soon resolved. But no, this isn't war's minor glitch. It's a flaming signal. Russia's economy crumbles under Putin's endless special operation, meant for quick triumph, now a grinding nightmare. The Moscow Times warns, recession looms, with state bank VEB projecting 2 straight quarters of 0.6% GDP shrinkage, a classic downturn. Combined with gasoline gouging, a shrinking pie means Russians scrape for necessities, from groceries to fuel. Pressure builds. Will Putin's hold finally fracture? Desperate, he turns to Belarus. Once Russia's puppet, now a reluctant savior. Their energy ties have frayed. Even in 2010, Russia choked gas to Belarus over unpaid bills. Yet Belarus enabled Putin's Ukraine gambit. Now, with Russia faltering, Belarus shifts from influence to lifeline. But can it deliver? Euromaidan press reports, on September 30, the Eurasian Economic Commission, including Russia and Belarus, scrapped all fuel import tariffs. This clears Russian purchases of refined oil from Belarus, tax-free, flooding in seas of gasoline. Russia craves it. Ukraine's blows predict 9 months to mend the short-term mess, if no fresh attacks follow, a shaky bet given Ukraine's success. The deal? Russia bars other countries' fuel exports domestically, pivoting to mass imports from Belarus. It's brutally one-sided, Putin's plea striking initially cold. With taxes, Russia offered under $1,000 per ton, Belarus eyed $1,300 to $1,900 internationally, declining Russia's bid for lesser sums. In the shadow of Kaliningrad, those terrifying Iskander missiles loom, each spanning 310 miles with nuclear payload potential, sending chills through NATO allies. Can America's P-8 surveillance planes pierce the veil, tracking their every move? Imagine the low hum of propellers slicing through frigid Baltic winds, the crisp radar pings unveiling secrets, the tension as warships glide in and out of Kaliningrad's fog-shrouded ports. With Ukraine's refinery assaults unveiling Russia's vulnerabilities, the U.S. has amplified threats. Back in July, Army Europe and Africa Commander Chris Donahue warned that NATO could seize Kaliningrad at blinding speed. This exclave bristles with arms, Europe's most militarized outcrop, birthplace of electronic warfare, GPS spoofing and jamming crippling ships and jets in the Baltic since Putin's invasion. P-8 flights over Kaliningrad extend their Baltic watch, spotlighting the exclave as top priority. Why else would their debut Norwegian deployment hug these borders? Now, US P-8s fortify NATO in critical zones. But what fresh storm does this herald, as Putin's grip loosens? Picture the earth-shaking roar of launched projectiles, the metallic tang of fear in the air, and the unexpected alliance twisting the war's fate. Will Russia's hidden weaknesses now be laid bare, forcing a desperate bid for survival? In this tense standoff, the U.S. has unleashed a seismic shift in the Russia-Ukraine war, forever altering its contours. They've begun feeding Ukraine intelligence on deep Russian targets, bolstering Kyiv's blows on Kremlin infrastructure. A courageous leap. One igniting repercussions that could ignite global flames. Imagine a world on the brink of chaos, where airspaces are continuously violated and the shadowy tactics of warfare unfold each day. As tensions rise in the Baltic region, NATO's mission is clear: to safeguard Allied skies and counter Russia's aggressive maneuvers. Recently, a new deployment of P-8 Poseidon aircraft, capable of reconnaissance and surveillance, was initiated to bolster this crucial air policing effort. These aircraft aren't designed for air-to-air combat, rather, they serve as vigilant guardians, enhancing early warning systems and tracking Russian naval activities. In September, a wave of unsettling incursions highlighted Russia's boldness, sent drones buzzing menacingly over NATO territories, including Poland, Romania, and even France. How does one nation manage to enforce respect in the skies when another seems determined to disrupt it? The answer lies in the strategic deployment of P-8 Poseidons, acting not just as observers, but as a formidable deterrent. However, questions loom about their effectiveness. Can they truly stand against the shadow fleet at Russia's command? In the wake of these incursions, NATO's Baltic mission has become urgent. This mission operates uninterrupted, day in and day out, ensuring that fighter jets are poised and ready at a moment's notice. As the P-8s take their positions, Europe feels the palpable tension. The air thickens with trepidation, every drone's whir echoes the stakes of a looming confrontation. Yet amidst uncertainty, there's a complex dance of strategy at play. Russia, often characterized by its deceitful methods, may have thought its incursions would go unchallenged. But in this unfolding chess match, the P-8s stand ready, keeping a watchful eye and gathering vital intelligence. As drone sightings become routine, the stakes escalate. How will NATO respond when the balance teeters further toward escalation? The narrative unravels as the world watches. What implications will these maneuvers have for not just NATO, but the stability of Europe as a whole? Each day brings new developments, underscoring the fragile status quo. Can these reconnaissance planes truly anticipate and neutralize threats? And as history teaches us, in moments of strategic vulnerability, the dynamics of power can shift in the blink of an eye. Imagine the fear gripping Europe as distant engines hum ominously. Is Vladimir Putin pushing his luck too far with brazen airspace invasions? Could his shadow fleet unleash chaos, turning oil smugglers into drone launchers? In this war's turbulent skies, a new game has begun. Shocking truth, Russia's sneak attacks have rattled at least 10 European nations in just weeks. The air thickens with alarm as NATO bolts awake, deploying sharp-eyed patrols to guard the Baltic's fragile peace. NATO's aerial shield stands firm against sneaky threats. Its peacetime guardians, fighters on alert, swoop in at the first suspicious shadow. Circadian rhythm of vigilance, crews poised 24/7, 365 days, engines idling, ready for intrusion's blare. P-8 Poseidons glide in, not warriors for dogfights, but watchful sentinels amplifying alerts. They track ghostly submarines and ships, their radars painting threats in eerie green glow. In Norway's icy grip, their arrival feels like a chilling slap back. This fortified wall across the east curtails Russia's shadowy dance. Why would Putin provoke such a far-reaching guardian? What desperate gambit hides behind his rogue moves? As tension coils tighter, a startling reveal looms. What if these jets expose more than just maneuvers? Russia's September rampage unfolds like a storm's relentless downpour. Drone swarms and jet hunters slice through NATO airspace, evoking heart-pounding dread. Euronews echoes the uproar. 10 European lands endure these taunts, September's blows hitting hardest. Poland's nightmare, 19 drones crashing borders, dominated cries, but Romania, Germany, Denmark, and France face the same chilling swarm. Each breach, alarms wailing, skies tainted with panic's sting. P-8s can't duel these pests or even spot their silent buzz easily, yet they might adapt as needed. Fingers tighten on controls, sweat beating in cockpits. Why this escalation? How does it tie to crisp Norwegian winds? Pausing here, a gut-twisting connection emerges. These incursions stem from Russia's elusive flotilla, once cloaked, now arrayed for menace. The link cracks open. Russia's Phantom Armada, thought for sanction evasion, now births drone threats piercing defenses. Slick hulls, fueled by desperation, launch unseen arms. Feel the ocean's salty spray, the distant drone whirs fading into European horizons. Ukraine's bold claims jolt awake. From oil runners to gravity launchers, these ships reprogram chaos. No longer benign smugglers, they're missile nests, humiliating Putin's bravado. Will this dual-use fleet crumble under NATO's gaze? Or will unexpected alliances, or failures, flip the script, turning the tide in a heartbeat? As alliances shudder, the abyss of retaliation beckons, tugging at the cliff's edge of global upheaval. What twisted fate awaits next, lurking in uncharted seas? Shockwaves reverberate through the ornate halls of the Kremlin, as the relentless onslaught from Ukraine disrupts the very foundations of Russia's regime. The pungent smell of burning oil lingers in the air, signaling chaos, while frantic officials scramble to respond to an unyielding crisis. As Vladimir Putin grapples with desperation, can he maintain his grip, or will the mounting gasoline shortages expose a vulnerability that shatters his stronghold? Week after week, Ukraine has strategically inflicted damage on Russia where it truly matters. It's not merely the staggering loss of life on the battlefield or the devastation of military hardware, it's a more cunning assault targeting the heart of Russia's energy empire, its oil refineries. As these crucial facilities are systematically battered, Putin finds himself on the brink of a crisis. With no viable alternatives, he's appealing to Belarus for assistance as Ukraine relentlessly dismantles the very pillars of his power. Recent reports from the Kyiv Post reveal a staggering fact: Ukraine has now obliterated 38% of Russia's oil refining capacity. Almost one-third of Russia's capability has simply vanished, leaving Putin scrambling for solutions while crucial repairs remain elusive and time-consuming. Ukraine's strategy has evolved into a cycle of continuous strikes, where every rebuilding effort is met with further assaults. Essential parts, hindered by Western sanctions, are hard to procure, and Russia is left grappling with a growing energy void. Statistically, the impacts are significant. Ukrainian attacks have rendered 338,000 tons of daily oil refining non-existent, causing Russia's gasoline output to plummet by roughly 1 million tons. This lack of fuel is wreaking havoc across the domestic market, and reports indicate that Russia now faces a 20% shortfall in gasoline supplies. This severe deficiency directly undermines Putin's carefully crafted narrative about military success and control over the country. How convincing can his claims be when citizens face endless lines at gas stations, yearning for fuel that once flowed freely? As the crisis deepens, Forbes journalist David Hambling highlights the stark reality: once isolated shortages in distant regions have escalated into a nationwide fiasco. The soaring prices at the pump, where some are forced to pay up to $4.52 a gallon, stand in stark contrast to the officially stated average of $2.66. The shocking discrepancy reveals a ruse more insidious than mere statistics. Furthermore, wholesale gasoline prices have spiked more than 40% since the beginning of the year, placing severe strains on consumers if stations can maintain supplies at all. In a desperate attempt to alleviate the situation, Putin turns to Belarus. But what challenges await? Shortages have escalated to the extent that over 20 regions are now imposing strict purchase limits. In Crimea, the occupied territory, individual purchases are capped at 30 liters, approximately 6.5 gallons, per person. In some areas, the limits drop to a mere 10 liters, leaving cars stranded and consumers frustrated. Fuel stations are swiftly closing their doors. And panic spreads like wildfire as families struggle to manage transportation. The Moscow Times asserts with unyielding clarity, Putin can't hide Russia's gasoline crisis. While those in the fuel industry attempt to downplay the severity, the reality is undeniable. This situation is not just a wartime inconvenience, it's a glaring warning sign of an impending economic collapse under a regime whose military goals have now turned into an ongoing nightmare. The state bank VEB predicts a grim outlook: 2 consecutive quarters of GDP contraction. This economic downturn translates to less money circulating in a country already grappling with rising costs. In his avarice, will Putin's leadership finally unravel? In a move reflecting desperation, Putin seeks refuge in Belarus, a nation once viewed as a mere puppet state. A historical lens reveals their fraught relationship, where disputes over gas supplies once divided them. However, with Russia in decline, Belarus transitions from a subordinate ally to a potential savior. But the question looms large: can Belarus truly deliver the support Russia so desperately requires? As of September 30th, an agreement within the Eurasian Economic Commission temporarily lifted fuel import duties. This significant development allows Russia to import refined oil from Belarus without taxation, yet this arrangement appears dreadfully one-sided. Initially, Russia's offers below $1,000 per ton stand starkly against Belarus's ability to command higher prices internationally. With Belarus disinclined to sell at a loss, Putin's entreaties may falter. In the ominous shadow of Kaliningrad, the tactical Iskander missiles await deployment, each with the capability to strike significant distances. NATO's heightened surveillance, particularly through the deployment of P-8 reconnaissance aircraft, could provide critical insights into potential threats. As the low hum of these aircraft blends with the brisk Baltic winds, tension hangs palpably in the air. The stakes escalate dramatically. What new developments lurk beyond the horizon as the conflict deepens? As Ukraine continues to validate its strength, the US has stepped up to feed vital intelligence to assist Ukraine in crippling Russian infrastructure. Is this the moment that shifts the tide of this multinational struggle? The implications of this support reverberate across the geopolitical stage, with global repercussions that could ignite broader conflicts. Will Russia's vulnerabilities be laid bare, forcing a desperate plea for survival? As darkness closes in, the relentless battles surge forward, and the reality of the war unravels. Alongside mounting pressure in Russia, the precarious nature of alliances could shape the next phases of this ongoing saga. What is being established right now may very well define the future for all parties involved.